All right, well, we're going to try this again. So, I just got done doing a 24-minute video. I'm going to try to keep it shorter this time. I want to talk about something. Last time I did a video, it's fairly heavy. This one's going to be kind of heavy too. So on Facebook, there was a post about praise and worship, whether it was entertainment or praise and worship, and whether specifically modern praise and worship was entertainment or actual biblical form of praise and worship, is basically what they were getting at. And so for me, a kind of false dichotomy that it can't be both praise and worship and entertainment. For example, pastor gives a sermon, and during his sermon, over the course of the sermon, he tells some a funny story, a joke, an anecdote of some sort, and it makes you laugh, and you're entertained by it. Some pastors are actually very entertaining to listen to. They're great at delivering zingers and one-liners. I envy that. But does the pastor's sermon now become no longer a sermon but entertainment because he told a joke? So praise and worship, because the praise and worship team has put in the effort to do the songs really well, for the drummer to do a stellar, on-time, syncopated drum fill, or the guitar player to do a guitar solo, for the vocals to sound top-notch, almost to the point of the praise and worship services sounding like the recordings you listen to in your home or in your car. And then we have the lights and the smoke machine, so you can see the lights and the light rays. And people claiming that it's a distraction. And it comes across as entertainment. So, a couple of things there I want to address in this regards. And I want to go to the Wayback Machine from, I want to say, 91-ish to about 95. I got involved with church music. This would have been my high school years and post-high school years. Essentially, the church was embroiled in what I would call the worship wars. There was this transition from a lot of churches going from the hymnals over into contemporary choruses and full-on contemporary praise and worship style music. Bands like Petra were coming out with Christian rock style songs. Another one was Sanctuary. And of course, at this time, there was the growth of contemporary Christian music and Christian hard rock, Christian heavy metal, and various aspects of Christian metal. But going back specifically to the church, it was a war. Churches were teaching against the other churches, saying, that church is not a Christian church. They are, worshiping the devil. They are worshiping themselves. They're not a Holy Spirit sanctified fire. It was nonsense. And how do I know it was nonsense? Well, I was there. And I was there in the middle of this with a particular church I grew up in, where there were those who wanted the traditional, yet there was a growing number of us who wanted the contemporary. And the contemporaries eventually won out, and the traditionalists, they had a service to themselves where they did traditional music and then the contemporary. eventually the traditionalists missed the youthfulness of the people that were in the contemporary service, and the traditionalists gave up and came over to the contemporary service. Not without some objections. I remember one particular music practice night, the organist asked me to turn down the drums, and I sarcastically said, if you can find the volume knob on the drums, I will gladly turn the drums down. Probably not my finest moment. But going to 95, I joined the Marine Corps, and after having fought again 4 or 5 years, this praise and worship war, I find myself at Marine Corps boot camp down in San Diego, Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, and scary, dark place for a Christian kid who's never, outside of public school, never really been exposed to the kind of vitriol a drill instructor will throw at you. So it felt very dark. It felt very confusing, very godless. It felt to me. So knowing that Sunday was coming, I looked forward to it, and so we marched Sunday morning to chapel, and we got inside the theater there at the end of the parade deck there at MCRD, and we single file marched in, and we took our seats, and we were handed the bulletin. And as I looked into the bulletin, there was the songs we were going to sing. I didn't recognize a single one. And out walks a priest. I believe he was like a Lutheran priest. He had the collar on. He was teaching the Protestant service. He might have been Catholic and was doing dual duty and doing the Protestant service. I don't know. And then out comes a little old lady and sits behind the organ. We begin singing these hymnals. I have no clue whatsoever they are. And I'm sitting there, and I'm mad, and I'm hurt, and I'm upset. I'm going, how can I worship God? I need to feel, I need to experience God in this place, and how can I do that? There was one song on that list I did recognize. And it wasn't a song for praise and worship. It was a song for Children's Vacation Bible School, for a Sunday school. And it was This Little Light of Mine. And the song was playing. Some Marines were singing it. They had their hands around each other. They were kind of goofing off. But I'm hurt, and I'm mad at God, and I'm saying, God, I need you. God, I need you. And then out of my lips comes this little light of mine. And I'm going, God, I need to experience you. I'm going to let it shine. God, I need to feel your presence, this little light of mine. I'm going to let it shine. And the next thing you know, I'm on my knees. My hands are lifted. And I'm crying. And I'm worshiping to this little light of mine. I'm going to let it shine. It was in that moment that I realized, and Matt Redman would later go on to write about it, it was about the heart of worship. I could have worshiped just as hard and just as furious with nothing but the blood and victory in Jesus and at the cross. And now I love to worship with how great thou art. And see, the funny thing is that was the very thing we were upset with the traditional hymnists about, was that the vast majority of them were not singing it from a heart of worship. They were just singing the songs because that was the only songs that they knew, and they had always sang them. And that at some point in time, they stopped singing them from a heart of worship and were singing them only because that's what they knew. It was tradition now. They stopped having a heart of worship. So what does this have to do with modern praise and worship, and whether it's entertainment or not? Within the church, there is nothing in the Bible that says how we're to do a service. We have presupposed, based upon Old Testament passages and Jewish tradition, and kind of brought it forward and then added some man-made tradition into it. But you will not find a verse that says, welcome everybody into the service, open up the service with prayer, open up with 3 songs, 4 songs, however that looks like. Welcome everybody again, and then take the offering, do the announcements, go into a time of worship, keep it brief and short, and then hit that worship section, do 2, 3 songs, do no more than 4, 5, 6 songs, whatever that looks like to you, and then have the pastor come out at the tail end of that song, somebody carrying his pulpit, lights, no lights, drums, no drums. That's not there. It's not there. But what is there is this idea of David talking about a sacrifice of praise. So when the praise and worship team offers up their sacrifice of praise and worship, is it the songs that they're singing and how they sing it? Well, in part. But it also has to do with how they play their instruments. They don't stop at just learning 4 chords and a particular strum pattern. They break down the mechanics of the songs and they learn them. Many of them will spend all week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks before you hear that song, or more, before you hear that song on a Sunday service. And they were going to perfect that one particular song, so that when they perform that song, it now becomes a sacrifice of praise, their first, their finest, their best, that they have to offer with the gifts and talents and calling God has called them to. Same thing with the singers. The presentation, whether they move on the stage or they stand still, everything is about trying to figure out a way to offer up their best, their very best that they have to offer. Now, some of you go, well, why do they have to do blah, 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 blah? I've watched churches who have full-on symphony orchestras who sound just as good as San Francisco Pop or anyone you want to name. They're offering up the first and finest of their gifts, talents, and abilities. They've practiced, they've rehearsed, they've prepared throughout the week to eliminate distractions for you, the worshiper, on Sunday. See, for a praise and worship team, from my perspective, the praise and worship team offering up a time of praise and worship for themselves is secondary to them doing the music in such a way that it eliminates distractions for you, the congregation. Why? Because you, the congregation, are the choir. And we're facilitating your sacrifice of praise and worship, your time of worship. This is your chance to offer up a sacrifice of praise and worship. And if what we're doing on the stage, playing a wrong chord, singing the wrong key, dropping an instrument, whatever, distracts you from that, then that's on us, and we didn't do maybe our very best. And now our distraction, our mistake, has caused you to be distracted. And it snowballs. The question I have for the congregation, though, is you guys are essentially the choir. So what have you done during the week for Sunday morning? How many of you have prepared your heart and mind before you get into the church? See, when we go back to that verse, we come into your courts with thanksgiving in our heart. Well, that outer court is the preparation to go into the inner court. Far too many of us, and I've done this, has hit that outer court, the parking lot, and we've just got done arguing with our spouse or with our kids, or had that argument or the spouse with the kids, at the house, and now by the time we hit the church parking lot, it's been silent treatment up until we come into the first person that we know, and then church face comes on. And then, oh, hey, brother, glad to see you. Sister, good to see you. So glad you're here. Oh, good. Oh, wow. I'm blessed to be blessed, brother. But you're really not feeling it. Or you may not even put on that church face. You may just walk quietly in, take your seat, and you're holding on to that. Now praise and worship starts. And instead of offering up from the very beginning thanksgiving in your heart, praise, you're praying and beseeching God, or you're taking this moment during the praise to kind of like push those intrusive thoughts of that argument to the back of your head till you get home after the service. Then that way, by the time the praise is done, you're hopefully going to be able to worship. Or you're praying through and you're trying to get past it all during the time of praise. Then hopefully by the time you hit the worship portion of it, maybe you're able to enter in and actually offer up your sacrifice of praise. But is that the finest you can do? The praise and worship team has spent all week preparing. Rehearsals, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours long at the church, rehearsing as a band. But then at home, they've spent 1, 2, 3, 4 hours or so learning their individual parts. That way, when they show up to practice, they're rehearsed. They know their part, and they can present their part and make minor changes here and there based upon the worship leader. But congregation, you're the choir. And so, are you going to be the one that the drums are too loud? I can't press in. The guitar is distracting. I can't press in. The lights are distracting. I can't close my eyes and ignore the lights and the smoke machine. They're too rehearsed. They're too polished. It looks like a show. Well, it's not for you, the church, that portion of the service. What's for you is to offer up your sacrifice of praise and worship. The portion of the quote-unquote entertainment is for the non-believer. for them to not only see you and others, the church, praise and worship in spirit and in truth, but for them to go, wow, I can identify this with this, and I can see these people are receiving something, doing something. I want to know more about it. And hopefully it draws them in. Hopefully it breaks their heart towards Christ, towards the thing of God, towards the Holy Spirit being able to work within them, maybe throughout that service or maybe over the course of time, throughout multiple services. The question shouldn't be really whether it's entertainment or praise and worship. It's about what are you doing with the time that you are given. The Bible talks about do everything as if you're doing it to the Lord. Whether that's going to work, do it as if you're doing it to the Lord. Whether it's taking care of your kids, do it as if you're doing it to the Lord. Whether you're vacuuming the floor, doing the laundry, doing the dishes, loving and respecting and honoring your spouse, do it as if you're doing it unto the Lord. Those are sacrifices of praise and worship. You're doing it to honor and bless God. Our lives should be lived in praise and in worship. In good times and bad times. Paul and Silas. We know the stories. They're there. We've read them. But we don't apply them. So I want to challenge you. Stop offering up a sacrifice of Cain and then wondering why God isn't blessing your life. Why you aren't receiving, why you aren't getting the Holy Spirit goosebumps, whatever it looks like for you and your tradition of praise and worship. If you're not receiving something during the praise and worship, it's because your heart is not in the right place. And you're offering up a sacrifice of Cain. You're offering up a half-hearted sacrifice. Because no matter what the distraction, you can press through. The saying goes in the military, there's no atheists in foxholes. Everybody cries out, "Oh God," at some point in time. You instantly believe. When you're scared, when you're needing God, you're going to start praying. Maybe some of you need to get scared. Maybe some of you need to get desperate for God. Because you realize you've been offering up a sacrifice of Cain. Maybe. Now, I'm not talking to all of you. I'm not directing this at any particular person. Just saying in general. And if this speaks to you, fix it. Fix it. Only you can fix it. It's not on the praise and worship team to fix your worship, to fix your praise. It's not on the praise and worship team to offer up your sacrifice of praise and worship. If you're sitting there feeling like you're being entertained, that's on you. Because you're allowing yourself to be entertained. The distraction's on you. You're looking for an excuse. No ifs and or buts about it. You're looking for an excuse. And if that's the case, maybe the church you're at is not the right church for you. You may like the people, you may like the fellowship, but if all you're going to do is groan and complain about the praise and worship, I promise you, promise you, there is a church out there for you. You may have to drive further. You may find it next door. But don't be the person who is the dissenting voice in a church where if that's their church identity and the pastor and the elders that's what they've established, Great. I actually have some regrets for my part in the worship wars, for being divisive in that way. It was a two-edged sword. It was something that needed to be done. At the same time, we probably went about it the wrong way. We hurt traditionalists, and the traditionalists hurt a lot of, kids in the process. So, where's your heart at? Where's your heart of worship? Where's your sacrifice of praise? Kind of heavy. There's no easy way around that. Other than to say that you and you alone can fix it. You and you alone can change it. Whether it's this little light of mine or the loudest, you name it, praise and worship song. Whether it's even from a song you may have huge theological differences with. If the song speaks a spiritual truth, maybe address the theological implications and the LLIC issues with your pastor and your eldership team. But worship through it anyways. Worship through it anyways. If it speaks a spiritual truth, worship through it anyways. That's all I got, guys. Hey, I love you all. Again, I said from the beginning, it's a heavy topic. If you've stuck with me this far, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. May God bless you. And as we get ready to head into the this month being Easter, make this change. Christ sacrificed his very life. At least we could offer up our best sacrifice during our time of praise and worship. And that begins with preparing our hearts and minds at the beginning of the week and not trying to do it when we get to church on Sunday. So let's go for it. Let's make that our goal. All week long, not Sunday morning. All week long, not Sunday morning. Not 3 songs in, not 4 songs in, all week long. Love you guys. Take care. God bless.